We want to pick up today on our discussion of the resurrection of 1 Corinthians chapter 15. We've been examining the fact that Paul said, when the mortal shall put on immortality, the corruptible shall put on incorruptibility, then shall be brought to pass the saying, death is swallowed up in victory. Well, that's a direct quote from Isaiah chapter 25, verse 8, as virtually every known scholar in the history of the world who's paid any attention recognizes. So what we've been doing is looking at the context of Isaiah 25. I mean, after all, Paul said his doctrine of the resurrection was from the promises that God made to Old Covenant Israel, Israel after the flesh. Well, I've shared with you that Isaiah 24 posits the resurrection at the time of the destruction of, quote, heaven and earth, unquote, as a result of Israel's violation of Torah. I have shown you that it would be the time of the kingdom. I have shown you that Isaiah 25, verses 1 to 3, unequivocally posit that resurrection at the time of the destruction of Jerusalem and the turning of the temple over to foreigners. How much clearer could the testimony of Scripture be? How much more testimony do we need? But that's not all that we have. I want you to notice that in Isaiah chapter 25, verse 6, the Lord said, and in this mountain. Now, that mountain that he's talking about is Zion. It refers directly right back to chapter 24, the last two verses, about how Yahweh, in defeating his enemies, would then rule gloriously in Zion. That was at the time of the destruction of the city and the temple. And he says, again, and in this mountain the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast of choice pieces, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of well-defined wines on the lees. Folks, this is what is known in both Hebraic commentators, midrashes, and in virtually all critical scholarly commentaries as the Messianic Banquet. It is the wedding banquet. Now look, I got to tell you, we could literally spend months discussing the motif of the Messianic Banquet. It was one of Jesus's very favorite themes, because Jesus came to fulfill God's Old Covenant promises made to Old Covenant Israel, to restore Israel, and the restoration of Israel is invariably posited, guess what? At the time of the resurrection, at the time of the Messianic Banquet. This language is used over and over and over again. Let me illustrate. Now look, here we have the prediction of the resurrection at the time of the Messianic Banquet. Now I want to share with you very quickly an incredible passage in Matthew chapter 8, verse 11, in response to the faith of the centurion. Jesus said, many will come from the east and from the west, and shall sit down with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob in the kingdom, and the sons of the kingdom shall be cast out. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. We will be taking a look at the direct parallel to that passage later on. But notice, this is incredible. Here Jesus says that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would sit down in the kingdom when those from the east and the west came and sat down with them, and the sons of the kingdom would be cast out. Do you catch the power of that? When would Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob sit down in the kingdom? At the time of the resurrection. Hebrews chapter 11 makes it abundantly clear that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob looked for, quote, the better resurrection. Hebrews 11:35. It would be the time of the heavenly city and the heavenly country. Well, that's the new heaven and the new earth, the time of the resurrection of Revelation 20, 21, and 22. When would that be? It would be when the sons of the kingdom would be cast out. Now, I've just got to share with you from my book, The Resurrection of Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, Future Fulfilled, what some of the leading dominionists believe about Matthew chapter 8, verse 11. Joel McDermott is on record as saying, quote, and he's commenting on Matthew chapter 8, verse 11, quote, the kingdom would be populated by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when the rebellious would be cast out. The kingdom population would also include, quote, the prophets, unquote, Luke 13:28. Now that's in his book on the parables of Jesus, Jesus v. Jerusalem. So Joel McDermott says Matthew chapter 8, verse 11 would be fulfilled in AD 70. But Matthew chapter 8, verse 11 is the resurrection of Isaiah chapter 25. The resurrection of Isaiah 25 is the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15. Therefore, the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 was to be fulfilled when? When the sons of the kingdom would be cast out. Likewise, Kenneth Gentry wrote in his book, He Shall Have Dominion, quote, in fact, the dark clouds of the day of the Lord, unquote, in AD 70 hung over much of the New Testament. God is preparing to punish His people Israel, remove the temple system, and reorient redemptive history from one people and land to all peoples through the earth. Matthew 8, 10 through 11, Matthew 21 through 43. That's in his book, He Shall Have Dominion, 2009, page 342. Once again, do you catch the power of that? Let me reiterate. The resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 would be in fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 25. Isaiah chapter 25 is when Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would sit down in the kingdom in the resurrection. But Matthew chapter 8 would be fulfilled when the sons of the kingdom were to be cast out, and Joel McDermott, Kenneth Gentry, Gary DeMar, and other leading dominionists say the sons of the kingdom, fulfilling Matthew 8, was fulfilled in AD 70. Folks, that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt the resurrection of 1 Corinthians 15 was in AD 70. And my goodness, yes, we've got more on the incredible importance of the Messianic Banquet and the fulfillment of 1 Corinthians 15. Okay, we've got a whole lot more on Isaiah 25 and the resurrection, and we'll see you on the flip side.